Hi, and welcome to another session of This Week in IntelEd. Today's session is about the week ending 9th of June 2023. And in this particular week, the story that I read the most, and of course, there was a lot of conversation around this theme, comes from a report that was launched at NAFSA in Washington, D.C. And it's a report that talks about career goal, as a concept, as a reason rising in study abroad motivation, and Canada edges past the UK as the choice of study destination. So, a few points from that particular report that I was reading. One is the fact that the top motivation to enroll on courses overseas is now moving towards career outcomes. Not a surprise anymore, because I think, with regards to the data that we are seeing from the source countries and the motivation of candidates or people to kind of look at better jobs because of the unemployment factors. I'm going to cover a little more in detail in the next slide. But because of the unemployment factors, this is a major reason why kids are coming out and are looking for studying abroad. The report that is called the State of Student Recruitment 2023, it surveyed about 23,000 people, mostly from Africa, and Canada's popularity shot up by 29%. I'm going to take the report with a pinch of salt, because I will tell you why in a couple of slides. Firstly, the first part of the report, in terms of the motivation, the study motivation now being aligned more towards career outcomes. No surprises. I had already covered this in one of my previous sessions, where I talked about China's youth unemployment rate, between the 16 to 24 year olds. I looked at the OECD unemployment rates. For example, Sweden, Italy, Spain. Spain was much higher than China anyway. And so was India's, for example, as per the World Bank report. It was in 2022, it was 23.2%. Now, these are again, like in India or China, are major source markets. Previously, these source markets used to come in for different reasons. I mean, there was of course the bragging rights about having a high quality education abroad. The fact that you could actually benchmark yourself a little higher than your peers when you go back to your country in terms of salaries, and of course the idea of migration was always available, and that was very attractive. But right now, I think that has all been overshadowed by the fact that they want jobs, frankly. And the feeling that they will have a job because of the post study work visa is very enticing. Also, there are challenges to that. It's not the complete picture, as has been pointed out by numerable number of commentators in the space. That post-study work visa doesn't really guarantee you getting a job or a career started in that particular destination. It does give you, some earning capability in those 2 years or 3 years, depending on if you're in the UK or US. So that's there. But if you look at the Canadian, data of 2022, you would find Nigeria at number five, and not no other African country in the top 10. Therefore, if the report has taken a lot of African student feedback into consideration for the Canada number, that looks like an aberration, frankly, just because in terms of the recent news items that have been there, and the impact that would have had in that feedback process. So, in terms of the second part of the equation, where we talk about Canada being, a choice destination and it's outscoring UK universities, UK universities are in a pretty bad shape. Okay, I mean, and there are really high budget deficits, and getting these numbers, pretty much specifically from their financial statements. You would look at an Exeter, for example, a deficit of 100 million. You would look at Durham, for example, one of the better ones, with 65 million. University of York at 84 million. And the problem is, and these are not the only ones. I've just put up these six here. There could be easily another 20 to 24 more that have such large deficits. And the problem that is plaguing the UK university is not only the deficit, because that's like telling you have a fever. The reason is something else, right? So there is an entire sort of set of activities that are happening behind the scene that is leading to these numbers. And of course, stupidity is one of them. But I think beyond that, in terms of their commitment to student services, the amount of money that they have spent on student services, if you look at all the reports from 2018 and 2019, and the impact that it has on student satisfaction, those are some of the points that also lead up to these numbers. Okay. um, the one comment that I read in the Pi News report from Adam Ranison, he's the head of business development at the Keystone subsidiary UniQuest. He's saying here that we are familiar with the ups and downs and peaks and troughs and changes in legislation. There's often an immediate reaction to decisions and legislation that will have an immediate response for some people as well, but ultimately it's not going to dampen the appeal of the UK completely. um, I don't agree to this comment. Both of them, basically, the first and the second paragraphs, if you look at it, this is not a up and down thing. This is not peak and trough. This is not something that is that has happened in the past, and then things have become better, and oh, suddenly this is all going to change very quickly. What we are seeing this time is an institution wide, sort of a structure wide impact of multiple factors. And the culmination of this disease, or let's say, simply to put it, without finding the better word, stupidity, of actually how UK universities have been dependent on certain systems, on certain sets of archaic models that have always delivered students. And that dependency is of course hurting now, because while these different legislations from the UK government and all of that would be helping, that's what you assume. It is not, because if you look at the recent announcements, it has been more negative than positive for the UK universities, because things like, for example, UK changes could disproportionately affect women. And then, Nick Hillman, who's the director of HAPI, he's saying that unpublished figures suggest 70% almost of the students who bring independence to the UK were women. That definitely puts Canada or an Australia in favor of against the UK, because suddenly a lot of the you know women candidates would think twice before applying to UK universities, which is disastrous for the UK, because already most of the universities are losing EU candidates. So EU tuition fee numbers have reduced, and significantly they have also sort of reduced, in some cases they have reduced their local tuition fee revenue as well. And if you look at, let's say, the case of Portsmouth, for example, the University of Portsmouth lost about 14 million pounds of local student tuition fee income alone, and about 5 million pounds of EU student income. So the challenge was that those 19 or 20 million that they lost was not made up by the 17 million pounds of international candidate enrollment income growth that they achieved. So overall, it was no surprise that University of Portsmouth was still sort of facing deficits across the board. And the other challenges I was talking about, that there is this low student satisfaction score, which is a part of conversations that don't really happen quite a bit. I think we should look at this, because if you look at the complete university guide ranks and look at the subsequent NSS rank, which is the 2021 rank, Birmingham, for example, has a national the student satisfaction survey or rank of 110. Just next to it, Bristol, rank 15th, has NSS rank of 77, which literally means that students are absolutely dissatisfied with how these universities are treating them. And the problem then, what happens is, the local population that would possibly look at these different universities would start looking at other options that immediately impacts the local numbers. And then comes the international numbers, because the international numbers, if you then stack up all of these different challenges, right, the entire the set of new announcements made by the UK government, where people can't bring in their dependents, and additionally, now a lot of these kids can't quickly change from tier 4 to tier 2, because of that was one of those reasons why a lot of people from the unemployment heavy countries were coming through here, because they wanted jobs. Now those are not available. So there would be a significant impact, is what I would assume, that we would see in the coming years. And I'm just going to leave you with this particular report, which I saw from this was from the Parliament report done by Paul Bolton. And if you look at this report, they talk about the IFS model, where the long run losses from all aspects of the pandemic was pegged at 11 billion pounds of money. That puts, the higher education sector at significant financial risk. And it is saying that at least 13 universities would end up with negative reserves and would be at risk of insolvency without a bailout, which just means that 30 UK universities, one of the best places for higher education, are going to be wiped out. And if that happens, it might create ripple effects, because it is not just 13 universities that have budget deficits as on today in 2022 financial statements. Quite many more are there. So I think that's a reserved estimate, and I think that's what the challenge is. So what the report actually tells us, that people are more interested to go to Canada, or people are more interested to look at career outcomes. If you look at the UK context, and then start talking about it, you will say, all right, Canada, take a pinch of salt, and let's say UK still dominates the postgrad demand. The problem comes with the career outcome bit. The problem comes with the preparedness of these universities and the amount of money that they have been spending in these services. It has been quite dismal, frankly, over the years. And I think if you have not done that hard work, if you've not done that heavy lifting on these kind of student services, then what's going to happen now is it's going to come back and bite you, because suddenly you just can't improve on the career outcomes, on some of those outcome values which candidates are looking for. Because no longer is the conversation alone enough saying, oh, we are a fantastic place for education, and this is high degree in terms of your ranking, and the potential of an improved learning. So those elements are there, but they're not the top one right now. So it's all career outcomes. It's very hardcore. The value of, like, basically the ROI is saying, I'm going to put this much money and how much salary I'm going to get. So that's where I think the game is. So I'm going to leave you guys with this thought, and I hope to talk to you again soon in my next session. Thank you so much for listening. Have a nice one.